स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्.
Our next speaker, Miss Seema Saroj ma'am, and then we'll have question and answer session.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Multidisciplinary courses. I am going to start with briefly introducing what assessment and evaluation are, what constitutes effective assessment and evaluation, and of course, moving on to assessment and evaluation as it happens for multidisciplinary courses with special focus on what the role of the teacher is. So for my purposes, I am defining assessment as the act of gathering information on an ongoing basis. It is for the purpose of understanding what the individual learning needs of each and every student are. We all know that assessment and evaluation are integral components of the teaching learning cycle. Our instruction, our teaching, our learning is not complete if we are not assessing and if we are not evaluating. And when we plan our assessment and evaluation effectively, it promotes learning, builds confidence, and develops students' understanding of themselves as learners as well. And when we effectively plan assessment and evaluation, it also helps in improving and guiding future instruction and learning. Evaluation, for my purpose, is the culmination of the information that has been gathered and then interpreting that information which has been gathered through relevant and appropriate assessment tasks for the purpose of making decisions or judgments often at the reporting time. These are continuous ongoing activities. They are planned for and derived from outcomes or learning objectives. And they have to be consistent with instructional strategies. The purpose can be defined basically through three stages of assessment. There is the assessment for learning. This is typically assessment that's done for diagnostic purposes. We may or may not do it intentionally, but as teachers, we do it intuitively all the time. It is the assessment which helps us as teachers to gain insight into what students understand in order to plan and guide instruction and to provide resources and support. So, if I am to sum up assessment for learning in a few words, it is the assessment that's done to understand where students are at. And we typically conduct it either at the start of our session, the academic session, the school year, or the start of each lecture or each teaching component. Assessment as learning is where we help students to gain an awareness of how they learn and use their awareness to advance their learning goals. And then this also allows them to take increased responsibility of their learning. This is done to determine the next steps in learning, and which our colleagues previously pointed out as formative assessment. Finally, there is the assessment of learning, which is after, which is the summative assessment part. And this happens when we give tasks to students to determine what they have learned based on data obtained through several assessment techniques. This is summative assessment or evaluation. Effective assessment and evaluation align performance tasks or assessment tasks with curricular outcomes or objectives. A key principle in creating an effective assessment and evaluation is to involve students in demonstrating how their learning will be demonstrated. We allow the students to make these decisions, and I'll give you an example. And I know in typical traditional classrooms, this may not always be possible for summative assessment, but we can definitely follow this for our formative assessment, for the ongoing assessment, for the time to time quizzes or assessments that happen during the instructional process. So we can ask the student, what is the best way for you to demonstrate how you will learn? This is the age of multimedia. And because of COVID, because of online instructional practices, this has made our task rather easier. So a student may choose to create a video to demonstrate their learning. Another student may choose to do a role play, and there could be another student that may just create an infographic. So, all these are excellent tools for formative assessment. They allow the students the flexibility to choose, to take ownership of their learning, and then you'll be able to see the pride with which they are able to share their assessments or the tasks that they have completed in the classroom. In a face to face classroom, sometimes providing these options to students may not always be practical. I remember my own days when I was teaching at the DAV college, and what would happen is in a class full of 80 students, it's hard to provide that level of individual detail to help each student identify which performance task would work best for them. But because of COVID, now that we have been able to pivot the whole learning and teaching process, I think this can come in handy. Effective assessment and evaluation also provide evidence to demonstrate that students have achieved an outcome, which takes me back to what the previous speakers talked about. Any assessment task has to be directly related to the learning objective and based on the instructional practice as well. So, what is the assessment and evaluation process? What does it look like? So we go backwards. We look at the outcome and the related indicators that are attached to that curriculum. We develop an assessment task appropriate for the outcome. We design any tools needed to accompany the task. It can be a rubric, it can be an anecdotal observation form. And this is something that I found truly useful when I came here. So, what generally happens in a traditional classroom is we provide an assessment task and then expect the students to understand what is expected of them. Creating rubrics, it can generally be a holistic rubric. It does not have to be an analytical or an analogic rubric, but even if it's a holistic rubric, it could be a 4-point grades or whatever system you want to achieve or you want to create, just to tell students what is expected of them. What are the expectations as a teacher? What do you expect them to do as a result of the assessment task that you are providing to them? Reflect upon and adjust, if necessary, the assessment task and plan for instruction to support student success. So, all these things are interlinked. We cannot view instruction or assessment in isolation, or curricular outcomes for that matter. So, they are all interlinked, and the student and the teacher both have to be able to see that interconnection every step of the way. Which brings me to our topic, assessment and evaluation in multidisciplinary courses. We know this is the age of information technology. The world is interconnected. Teaching and learning are interconnected too. And we see evidence of multi or interdisciplinary or even transdisciplinary studies through basically three models. One is there is no early streaming in a faculty or area of study. When that happens, a student is able to choose subjects that may be of different faculties. For example, say, I'll give you the example of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. A student who's taking medical courses or non medical courses may be allowed to choose liberal arts, fine arts, performing arts, and that those courses are also added and they are counted towards their credits. Then there are multidisciplinary courses which combine two areas of study. For example, a course may combine hospitality and marketing, economics and marketing, biotechnology, which combines chemistry and technology, and then there is financial engineering as well. The third model is the inter or multidisciplinary skills, which put simply means the skills are combined, the skills that belong to different disciplines are combined. And I think each student needs to be aware of that, and each students need to be taught, and each student needs to learn those skills. For example, research, critical thinking, data analytics, information management, all these things are combined. So, how do we assess and evaluate multidisciplinary courses? Again, going back to what the previous speakers talked about, you have to clearly define what the learning objectives, learning goals, or learning outcomes are. And you have to create assessment tasks which are aligned with outcomes. You may or may not be expert in both areas. For example, if there is hospitality and management, you may have expertise in one area. It's always prudent to collaborate with your colleagues. In fact, following a team-based collaboration is an ideal approach. Talk to your colleagues, go online, do some research, try to develop expertise. And if you are not able to, not everyone can be an expert in all the areas. Seek out help, seek out resources. And that's the best way to approach this. Finally, what is the teacher's role? The role has also changed over the years. It's no longer, a teacher is no longer a sage on the stage who's just sitting there, who's the holder, the keeper of all knowledge that they are disseminating. So Geeta ma'am talked about, students memorizing everything and regurgitating it during their exam. That's not ideal. You are a facilitator to help guide and foster student success. The key to doing this is to follow a student-centered approach. Focus on their previous experiences, background, and life situation. We talked about the challenges that students are experiencing due to the online format of learning. All these challenges, whether they are in their personal lives or whether they are external to them, they are at the center of those experiences. So be cognizant of them, be aware of them, be sympathetic to them, and try to create assessment tasks which align with the student situation and even the instruction that aligns with the situation of the student. Sorry, am I not audible?
You are audible, ma'am. You are.
You are audible.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so one of the things that really works well in an online format is a flipped classroom. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, and maybe you have been following it intuitively. So what happens is the homework that is traditionally given to students to go work at home becomes part of the classroom exercise. We talked about sharing transcripts of lectures as PDF. We talked about sharing videos with the students. All this prep work is done by students either at home or they are given some time during the classroom time to view those videos, and then they can come back for group discussions. Again, in a class of 40 or 50 students or 80 or 100 students, group work would have been extremely challenging. But now COVID has given us an opportunity to pivot this challenge into an opportunity. It's the group work that has become easier to happen and to conduct and to control in a way too, to facilitate in a way using online platforms. So if we focus more on the student and try to think from their perspectives, the key question is, what is it that I want my student to learn at any given time during the school year, during the college year? A teacher is intuitively and through experience and interaction with the students is aware of where their students are at any given point in time. And that is something that should drive our instruction. That is something that should drive our assessment and evaluation practices, knowing where our students are at, understanding where they need to go, and sharing that information with the student just so they develop a clear understanding of what the learning goals are. And then based on the instruction and support that you provide to them, they develop a clear understanding even of what the assessment and evaluation tasks are going to look like. Providing something as a surprise to them causes more stress. And that is something that we need to avoid as well. Open book test, that is something, again, we talked about it. The previous presenters talked about it. This is something like, what is it at the end of the day that you want the students to know? This is the key question that should drive your instruction and assessment, especially during online times, to be sympathetic, to be aware of a student situation, and to design your assessment and evaluation tasks in a way that they are aligned with the learning outcomes, as well as they are aligned with the students' situation, their life situation, and their experiences as well. And I think we will look at the questions later, but again, I would want to thank everyone present here for participating in the conference and for giving me the opportunity to be a participant as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your valuable inputs.